The auction was almost over. One by one, the alien slaves had been sold. Shiny collars, some cried. Some stared into nothing. The rich and powerful laughed as they chose their pets, workers, and entertainment. But, at the far end of the auction house, one cage remained. Inside that cage sat a girl. Not crying, not begging, not even blinking. Her skin was pale silver with strange glowing lines. Her long white hair was messy and wild. Her yellow eyes glowed like fire. Her arms and legs were wrapped in thick chains. Her hands had sharp claws. Her face was cold, dangerous, like she didn't care if she lived or died. The sign above her read, "Unsellable, untamable, extreme danger, do not approach." Guards stood around her cage with shock rods. Even they looked nervous. "Get rid of her already," one alien merchant grunted. "No one wants that animal." "She attacked 3 buyers," another whispered. "Tore one's face off." The crowd stayed far away from her. No one even looked her in the eyes. No one wanted a girl who couldn't be controlled. No one. Except one. Just as the auctioneer announced the closing, a man walked in. He was human. Not rich, not famous. He wore a simple brown coat and dusty boots. His eyes scanned the cages, but most were already empty. Then, he saw her. He stopped. In front of her cage, his eyes didn't show fear. He didn't flinch when she growled. He simply looked. Curious, the auctioneer rolled his eyes. "Forget her, human. She's not for sale, dangerous, impossible to train." The man spoke calmly. "What's the price?" The room went silent. The guards laughed. The auctioneer laughed even louder. "You want her? She'll kill you in your sleep." The man didn't. "Smile, name the price." 10 credits, the auctioneer said, mocking. "Just take her and die quickly." Without a word, the human dropped 10 credits on the counter. Everyone stared in shock. "She's yours." The auctioneer chuckled. "No refunds when you're dead." The guards opened the cage slowly, weapons ready. The girl didn't move. She just stared at the human. When the door opened, she stood slowly. Her chains clinked with every step. She stepped out of the cage and walked right up to the human. The guards flinched, ready to fire, but she stopped 1 step away from him and whispered in a voice like smoke and fire, "Why?" The human looked into her glowing yellow eyes and answered softly, "Because no one else did." The ride back to his home was silent. She sat in the back of the transport vehicle, still chained. Her eyes watched every move. Her muscles stayed tense. She didn't speak again. She didn't trust him. When they reached his small house on the edge of the wastelands, he unlocked the door and let her inside. He didn't chain her to the wall. He didn't hit her. He didn't command her. Instead, he gave her a room with soft lighting and a clean bed. Her chains remained, but he didn't tighten them. He didn't treat her like a beast. He brought a plate of food. She kicked it away. He left it on the floor and walked out. She waited until she was sure he was gone, then slowly crawled forward and ate. That night, the human sat on the small porch, drinking something warm. His name was Ryan. He didn't know what she was. Her species wasn't listed on the auction tag. Some kind of hybrid? A weapon? A failed experiment? All he knew was she wasn't a monster. She was just alone. Inside the house, she lay on the floor, not the bed. Her glowing eyes stared at the ceiling. Her body trembled slightly. No one had ever looked at her the way he did, like she was real, like she mattered. She hated it, and yet, a small part of her didn't single quotes T. The next morning, Ryan opened her door. She was sitting against the wall. Silent, awake, alert. He placed another plate of food on the table. She didn't move. "You don't have to eat it," he said softly, "but I'll leave it here in case you want to." She stared at him like a wild animal waiting to bite. "Why? Aren't you afraid of me?" she asked, her voice rough. Ryan looked at her carefully and answered, "Because you're not the monster they said you were. She stood slowly. Her chains dragged on the floor. "You don't know me." "No," Ryan said, "but I want to." And then he walked out again, leaving the door open behind him. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a thing. She felt seen. The night was quiet. Too quiet. A cold wind passed through the cracks of the old house, brushing gently against Ryan's face as he lay in bed. But his eyes stayed open, because she was just down the hall, the alien girl, still chained. Still untamed. Still watching in her room. She sat in the dark, knees pulled to her chest. The soft mattress was untouched. She preferred the corner. Hard floor. Cold walls. Something familiar. Her glowing yellow eyes stared at the open door. Ryan had left it open on purpose. A test? A trap? No. It was trust. She hated it. She could kill him in seconds. One strike. One bite. One scream that shattered his bones. So why didn't she? The next morning, Ryan woke up alive. He made 2 cups of hot broth and knocked softly on her doorframe. She looked up slowly. Her white hair fell over her face like snow over stone. "I brought something warm," he said gently. "You don't have to drink it. Just thought you might want to try." He placed the cup on a small table and walked away. She didn't speak, but after 10 minutes, the cup was empty. Later, as he worked in the garden, Ryan heard shouting behind him. 3 local aliens stood at his gate, pointing at the house. "You bought her," one barked. "Are you mad? She's cursed." Another shouted, "She killed a royal buyer on Kor's moon. Smashed his skull like fruit. She will kill you in your sleep." Ryan stood calmly, wiped his hands, replied, "She hasn't yet." "Yet," they repeated with disgust. "Don't say we didn't warn you, human." They walked off, shaking their heads, whispering words like fool, dead man, and waste of credits. That night, Ryan placed a blanket outside her door. Not in the room, just near. He didn't say anything, didn't look at her, didn't force kindness down her throat. He just let her choose. She dragged the blanket into the room an hour later, only because the floor was too cold. That's what she told herself. Days passed. Not much changed, except for the silence. It became less sharp, less like a wall, more like a quiet understanding. She still didn't tell him her name. He still didn't ask. But one night, as he passed her room, she whispered something so soft, he almost missed it. "Why didn't you chain my neck?" He stopped. "I don't want a pet," he said. "Then what do you want?" He paused, then answered, "A person, not a thing. Just you." She didn't reply, but after that night, she stopped sleeping on the floor. One morning, Ryan woke up to find the kitchen door slightly open. He walked in alert, hand near the drawer where he kept a small blaster just in case. But instead of finding a mess, he found her. Zyra. Standing still in front of the kitchen shelf, her chains dragging quietly behind her. She held a cup of tea, steam rising, fingers shaking slightly. "I made it too strong," she muttered. "I didn't know how long to let it steep." Ryan smiled gently. "You'll get it right next time." "There won't be a next time." He tilted his head. "Why not?" She looked at him. Eyes full of something strange. Not hate, not rage, not even fear, just uncertainty. "Because I'm not supposed to want to stay." He nodded slowly. "Then stay anyway." Zyra stood in front of the mirror. She had never looked at herself this long before. Not as a soldier, not as a weapon, not as property. Her silver skin shimmered under the soft light. Ryan had installed soft, not harsh like the prison lights. She touched the side of her neck where a collar used to be. Now only a faint scar remained. The door behind her creaked open. She didn't flinch. Ryan stood there, holding a towel. "I thought you might want something clean," he said gently. Zyra's claws twitched at her sides. Her yellow eyes narrowed. "Why do you keep giving?" Ryan smiled, but it was tired, honest, because someone should have. She stared at the towel like it was poison. "Stop trying to fix me," she hissed. "I'm not," he replied calmly. "I'm just letting you fix yourself." That made her angrier. She grabbed the towel and threw it in his face, claws out, teeth showing. "Do you think I'm weak?" Her voice echoed through the house like thunder. Ryan didn't step back, didn't lift a hand. He just said one word: "No." That silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Zira stood frozen, breathing hard. And Ryan? He picked the towel off the floor, placed it back on the hook, and walked away. He didn't fight back, didn't yell, didn't lock her up again. That scared her more than chains ever did. Later that night, Zira sat alone in the kitchen, staring at her claws. They were still sharp, still deadly, but now they trembled when she thought of him. Why? Why didn't he strike back? Why did his silence hurt more than blades? She got up, went to his room, but didn't knock. She just stood at the door, listening. Inside, Ryan was talking to himself, quietly recording a message on an old device. Day 7. "She's strong, scared, but strong. I think she's more human than she wants to admit." Zira's chest tightened. She didn't know why. She returned to her room without saying a word. The next morning, the living room was destroyed, a chair broken in half, dishes smashed, table cracked. Zira stood in the middle, breathing heavily. Her claws dripped with splinters, not blood. Ryan entered, looked around slowly, then looked at her. "You done?" he asked. She met his gaze, defiant. "I told you. I break everything." He nodded. "Good thing I build things." Then he walked past her, picked up the pieces of the table, and began fixing it just like that. No fear, no anger, no shouting, just patience. Zira stared at him, confused. She had broken bones before, broken necks, but she couldn't break this man's will. Not with claws, not with screams, not even with silence. And something deep inside her began to crack. Not a wound, not pain. Something older, older than chains. Older than rage. A hunger for peace. That night, she stood by his door again. This time, she knocked. Ryan opened the door, blinking sleep from his eyes. She didn't speak, just held out the towel, the one she had thrown yesterday. Folded. Clean. Ryan looked at her. No smile, no words, just a soft nod. She turned and walked away. She was still fighting, but now she was fighting herself. Zira didn't scream when the nightmares came. She just breathed harder, teeth clenched, fingers twitching, eyes flicking beneath their lids like they were trapped in a storm behind her skull. But Ryan heard her from the next room. Every night, around the same time, 3:17 a.m. began. Whispers in a language unknown, sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, like knives in the dark. But this night was different. She was crying, not loud. Not broken. Just one tear. It slid silently down her cheek as she turned to the wall, curling in on herself like a cornered animal. Ryan didn't knock this time. He opened the door slowly. Zira sat in the far corner, knees up, arms wrapped tight around them. No claws, no fire. Just shaking shoulders and silence. He sat on the floor, a few feet away. No words, just presence. After a long time she spoke. "Do you know how they trained me?" Her voice was quiet, hollow. Ryan didn't answer. He knew it wasn't really a question. "They kept me in a glass box. No food unless I obeyed. No light unless I stayed silent." She closed her eyes. "I bit my own arm once, just to feel something that was mine." Ryan's hand tightened around his leg, but he still said nothing. "I didn't even cry when they took Kyla." Her voice cracked. "She was my sister, or maybe my clone. I don't know anymore, but she smiled like I used to." Zira looked at her hands. The glowing lines on her skin dimmed, as if remembering the pain. They dragged her away when I failed a test. I heard her scream once. Then never again, Ryan finally spoke. They took her from you. Zira shook her head slowly. No, I let her go. Because I was too afraid to break the glass. Silence fell again. Only the wind outside made a sound now, like the ghosts of her past brushing against the windows. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He slid it across the floor to her. What is this? She asked. A memory chip, he said. Empty, yours now. You can record anything, keep it or erase it. It's yours to own. She stared at the silver circle resting at her feet. Such a small thing, but in her hands, it felt heavier than the chains she once wore. That night, she didn't cry, but she didn't sleep either. She sat up holding the chip, whispering her sister's name into it over and over, as if to keep the memory from fading. The next day, Ryan found her in the garden. She wasn't planting. She was just standing in the middle of the dirt. Barefoot, face tilted to the sky, eyes closed. Sunlight kissed her skin. It's warm, she said without looking at him. You've never felt it before? She opened her eyes. Not like this. Not without glass between me and the sky. Ryan smiled gently. You're healing. Zira turned toward him, something in her face soft and sharp at the same time. No, she whispered. I'm remembering who I was, before they taught me to forget. And just like that, her rage didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It was no longer a weapon. It was armor cracked, but still hers. It happened just before sunrise. The house was still dark, quiet, peaceful. Ryan stepped into the hallway, stretching. Another day, another chance, but he didn't expect her waiting in the shadows. Zira moved like smoke fast, silent, sharp. Before he could react, she grabbed his arm and slammed him into the wall. A claw at his throat, breath on his cheek, eyes burning. Gold in the dim light, but Ryan didn't flinch. He looked into her face and saw it. She was shaking. I could kill you, she whispered. Right now, Ryan's voice was calm. I know. Her claws didn't press harder. They trembled. Why don't you fight back? She growled. Because I don't need to. You're not afraid of me? I used to be. That made her pause. And now? Now I'm afraid for you. Zira's eyes widened, and then suddenly, her knees buckled. She let go of him and collapsed into his chest, claws scraping the wall instead of his skin. She wasn't attacking him. She was falling. Ryan held her. Not tightly. Just enough to keep her from slipping through the cracks she tried to hide. Zira didn't cry. She just breathed. Ragged, rapid, real. I woke up, she whispered. And I panicked. Why? Because I didn't want to hurt anymore, and that scared me. He led her to the kitchen, made tea, sat her down. She watched his hands closely, the way he moved without fear, without control, without needing anything from her. He placed the cup in front of her and said nothing. She looked at it for a long time. Then, slowly, she picked it up. And drank. That night, she didn't return to her room. Instead, she sat on the floor near his door. Not to guard him. Not to spy on him, but to listen. To feel something safe and alive. She spoke first. Not loudly. Just enough for him to hear through the wall. When I was 6, they made me fight a man twice my size. I broke his ribs. They gave me candy after. I didn't even know what it was. I ate it with blood on my hands. Inside, Ryan closed his eyes. He didn't interrupt. She continued. They trained me to rip, to tear, to strike first, even when I was starving. But you, her voice cracked. You hand me food with both hands, like I won't bite them. I won't, not anymore. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of something new, something warm, something terrifying. Trust. At dawn, Ryan found her asleep. Outside his door, curled up like a child. Not chained. Not broken. Just resting for once, not as a weapon, but as a person. And before she even opened her eyes, she whispered something into the floor. "Thank you for not fighting me back." The door was open, just a crack, but to Zira, it looked like the edge of a cliff. She stood at the threshold, barefoot, one hand resting against the frame. The morning light spilled across the wooden floor, touching her toes, and she didn't move. Not. Yet not because of chains. There were none now. Not because of fear, but because of something. Stranger hope. It felt too big to carry. Ryan stood in the garden, hands in the dirt, humming a tune she didn't recognize. He hadn't said anything about the open door. He just left it, waiting. Like an invitation, not a command, not a test, just a choice. Zira took one step forward. Her foot touched sunlight. She didn't melt. She didn't burn. She took another step, then another. Until both feet stood on warm stone. She blinked against the brightness. And for the first time since childhood, she saw the sky. No bars. No glass. No ceiling. Just sky. Endless, open, blue. She gasped without meaning to. Ryan looked up and saw her. He didn't wave, didn't smile big. He just nodded, simple, gentle, like a quiet welcome home. Zira walked slowly across the yard. She paused near the garden beds, staring at the green leaves pushing out of the soil. "They're alive," she said softly. "Yes," Ryan replied. "Everything here is." She knelt down, touched one of the leaves. It felt soft, delicate. She could crush it with one finger. But she didn't. "I used to dream of escaping," Zira whispered, "but in the dreams, I always woke up in another cage." Ryan placed a small shovel beside her. "Here," he said. "Help me grow something." Zira stared at the tool. "I destroy. I don't build," Ryan shrugged. "Maybe it's time to try something new." She took the shovel. And for the first time in her life, she planted a seed. Later that afternoon, Zira walked to the fence line. There were no guards. No alarms. No towers with guns. Just a wooden fence in the wind. She could run. Right now. She could disappear into the wild, but she didn't. She sat on the ground and closed her eyes, not to hide, but to breathe. Ryan watched her from the porch. She looked smaller in the sunlight. Not weak, just real, like a person finally taking off old armor, layer by layer. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold and orange, Zira returned to the house. She placed the small shovel on the table, looked Ryan in the eyes, and said quietly, "If I leave one day, it won't be to run away. It will be to come back." Ryan simply nodded. And for the first time, Zira smiled without hiding it. Not wide, not forced, just enough to be real. The wind felt wrong that morning. Zira stood in the garden, watering the new plants. She had named them quietly to herself. Names from a time before cages. But today, the birds didn't sing, and the sky had gone quiet. She knew before. She heard it, the hum of an engine. Heavy, military. Cold metal in the sky. Ryan stepped out of the house, wiping his hands. Zira didn't turn to look at him. "They found me," she said flatly. Ryan nodded once. "Then we stand together." She turned, then shocked. "I'm not yours to protect." "I never said you were," he replied. "But you're not alone either." The ship landed hard. In the clearing, dust rose like ghosts from the past. Out came 3 armored soldiers and a tall alien in a black coat. He walked like a man used to owning people. He didn't greet Ryan. He looked straight at Zira. "Property S7X99, he said. Coldly, "You've been recalled." Zira didn't move. "You were sold illegally," the officer added. "This man has no rights to you." Ryan stepped forward calmly. "She's not property." The officer didn't even glance at him. "This is not your concern, human. Stand aside." But Ryan didn't move, neither did Zira. "You remember me, don't you?" The officer smirked. At her. I was there when your sister failed her trial. Zira's hands clenched. Her claws grew, but she kept them down. We'll rebuild you, he said. Make you better. Clean this filth from your brain. He reached out a hand. Ryan stepped in front of her. Touch her, he said softly, and I promise you'll regret it. The officer laughed. Do you think love can save a weapon? Zira moved that fast, if not with claws, but with truth. She stepped beside Ryan, held her own hands up, and said clearly, I am not a weapon. I am not a thing. I am Zira. The soldiers raised their rifles. Ryan raised his voice. This land is protected. By neutral code. You fire, there will be war. The officer growled, backing off. This isn't over. Yes, Zira said, stepping forward, it is. Her eyes glowed not with rage, but with power, controlled, focused, hers. The officer gave a final glare, then turned and signaled retreat. The ship rose roaring and vanished into the clouds. Silence returned. Zira stood still for a long moment, breathing hard. Not from fear, but from freedom. That evening, the sun set red behind the garden. Zira knelt in the soil and planted a new seed by herself. She didn't look at Ryan when she spoke. Thank you. He walked up beside her and knelt. 2. For what? For giving me space. To remember who I was. She picked up a small flat stone and placed it beside the new plant. It had a name carved in it. T single quotes KLA. Ryan smiled softly. Is that her? Zira nodded. She never got to plant anything, but now she grows through me. As stars lit the sky, Zira stood with Ryan on the porch. No chains. No walls. No fear. Just two people watching the stars. Alive. Free. Together.